Welcome to Victim Justice Unveiled, a space where truth is honored, resilience is amplified, and justice is reimagined. Here, survivors, families, advocates, and system leaders come together to navigate the complex path of healing, accountability, and reform. Whether you're watching or listening, thank you for joining us in this journey where voices are uplifted and change begins. I'm your host, Tamara Musolino. Let's begin.
Welcome to Victim Justice Unveiled, where truth is honored, voices are uplifted, and justice is reimagined. Today's episode is especially meaningful, and I want to thank Donna Eckwortzel, founder and executive director of Heart's Landing Ranch, whose encouragement gave me the courage to launch this podcast. Donna's leadership has been recognized widely, including being named Woman of the Year in 2025. At Heart's Landing Ranch, horses and humans come together to heal, and through equine therapy, survivors and families find strength and connection in ways traditional therapy often cannot. As a volunteer, I've witnessed these transformations firsthand. In this conversation, we'll explore how equine therapy changes lives, how Donna's vision built a sanctuary for healing, and how each of us can help sustain this vital work.
Welcome to Victim Justice Unveiled. Today, my guest is Donna Eckwortzel. Donna and I met, a few years. I was the supervisor. I know, right? I was the supervisor of the Victim Services Unit in the DA's office here in Placer County, and was fortunate enough to be able to bring my team out to do a team building. And Donna was kind enough to provide that for us, and we got to see firsthand Heart's Landing Ranch in action, and it was an incredible moment. The team was... It was beautiful to see what transpired, and definitely, I was already sold on equine therapy, but that definitely sealed the deal. Fast forward, when I retired, I met with Donna, and she actually kind of pushed me a lot, to get this podcast off and running because of the need for people to understand how the system works and what victims actually go through. And a little quick side note, the Vandershoots are back in having another parole hearing early again, advanced a couple of years. Should have been 2028. It's going to be December this month, actually, for Daniel Bessemer, who was convicted in 2005. And his conviction, the base was 25 years. And then it's a 2-life sentence, but because of the change in legislation, youthful offender, it hasn't even been 25 years yet. And this will be his 3rd parole hearing.
When does it stop?
It doesn't. And so Donna pushing to make sure that we get this going and try and educate our community members, and, with the support of Heart's Landing Ranch. Ultimately, I ended up becoming a volunteer there, which I loved. Even the mucking the stalls, that was awesome too.
We're changing the world one turd at a time.
Yes. So Donna, I'll let you go ahead and share with who you are and what you do.
Well, Donna Eckwortzel, I am founder and executive director right now of an organization called Heart's Landing Ranch. And we use horses to help people get unstuck. And it's not a riding program. I want to say that right now. We're very focused on the mental health and trauma of individuals and helping them through difficult situations. We're taking mental health literally out of the box and putting it onto a ranch environment. Equine assisted psychotherapy and learning has a therapist involved, a mental health professional, an equine specialist, which requires 6,000 hours for us to get certified in that. You're part of our cohort doing that program. Then we have our horses that are engaged. They're not specially trained. In fact, all of ours are, except for one, have been rescued from slaughter or some other dire situation. And so they've seen trauma themselves. And so with the mental health team, we write curriculum based on the client's needs. So we can see individuals. So it's a team approach with the individual, or we see groups of people or workshops or team building, things like that you talked about, where there's maybe some stuckness, but we can help them get unstuck.
Yeah. And I know that, speaking of the team building and teams, there's also a group that was from the DA's office that I was a part of. And unfortunately I missed that event, but I'm very close to one of the members there that kind of found her healing in a moment at the ranch. And I know she speaks often for you guys.
Yep.
Does a lot of outreach for equine assisted therapy because she learned firsthand how it could help and heal her.
Right. She's a victim of crimes. And she's on her, she has a testimony on our Facebook page and website. So if people want to go on to Hearts Landing Ranch to see that. But we just came from, I want to do a shout out for Windermere Real Estate here in Roseville. They gave us a scholarship grant for people like her who are vulnerable. Equine mental health is sometimes covered by insurances, but not the equine assisted psychotherapy part. So over 70% of our clients need some kind of partial or full scholarship. And we don't want anyone to go away with, be turned away because of a lack of funds. But I think what's important for her is, here she was working with guys, trying to make awareness about victims of crime and getting them help and she'll tell her story. She walked in at that day full on with masks. And this is where the horses come in, full on. I've got it together. Everything's fine. But inside she was completely going nonlinear. And how many of us do that? And jumping forward, that's where the beauty and the magic of the horses come in, because they're prey animals and they don't understand that they're very much in the present. We're predators, speaking of that. So naturally we eat meat, we smell, we walk and talk very assertively, and they pick up the things that we discount or we discard, those flags that go up, the yellow flags, the red flags, those kinds of things. They pick those things up, and they pick up the discrepancies that were showing up happy, and really inside there's, something that's going on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I'm going to actually have her on the podcast as well. Yay. So we're looking forward to that when that happens. But to your point about the horses picking up things, I mean, if they're always looking and they're always aware of their surroundings because they are prey animals. So it's really interesting when you see a client go out and, have an interpretation of what is going on in there. I know that another part of what Hearts Landing Ranch does is you just came from a conference working with first responders and mental health related to that. And over the summer, I was fortunate to be able to part of the team that kind of walked that through as well over the summer. And that was just so incredible to see, having worked alongside first responders and law enforcement.
Right. You were ranch hand for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then being able to see how they interpret, it was just an incredible moment. And I am hopeful that more and more first responders take advantage of equine therapy because I think it's such, an important tool. Again, having worked with law enforcement, that, there's a lot that they see every day that the most, and they can't go home and talk about it because cases are confidential. And so they have to go home and put on that kind of that face of nothing's wrong. Hi, family, go home and hug their children, hug their spouses. And, there's a lot going on inside. And so I think giving them permission to be human and having those moments in a space that's safe
and confidential
is so important.
Yep. And I think the biggest thing, yes, I totally agree with you. They see the worst day in someone's life 10 times a day. We're not meant to handle this kind of trauma once, let alone multiple times a day, and not expect to be supported. And, in my speaking, so it's first responder conferences, and they go throughout the United States doing these kinds of things and bringing different speakers. And I felt blessed, one, to be asked to speak in front of an audience of 200 people. And these are peer support folks or supervisors. And, I know typically we'll think of a victim, as a brother secondary, and, they receive, all kinds of assault and threats. And that's how the morning started. On the very first morning was a story by Liz and Scott Brown, who he had been ambushed and his partner was killed. And so anyway, and I realized during that conference that I needed to do more self-care for myself. Because we're hearing things, even though the horses kind of absorb a lot of that things and the kind of the emotional piece of it, we're still hearing it. We're still feeling that as we're holding space for people. So the great thing that, what happens out in the field is that people feel that they're not judged. I mean, let me step back. Sitting in a room, talking with you, the traditional therapy, and I love our therapists. They work hard, and really are challenged in trying to help people get to, one, the bottom, and then so that they can, work through what's going on for them. And because we are good about putting on masks and walking around like everything's okay, there really is an outlet, right? Mm-hmm. So when we first started with children, my goal was that, there's so much potential, there's so much hope, there's so much there for them that for them to drag it through their lives until they're 30 or 40 or 50 and then finally get help. Like there's so much lost opportunity. And then on top of that, the impact that they have on people around them, not just their lives, but their whole community, their families, everyone that they're bringing up. Yeah, it's a huge domino effect. Yeah. Domino ripple. I mean, it has an effect. We have an effect. And as we established in 2013, established and started working on that, we knew we were going to start working with veterans. First responders was brought up by some of our equine specialists that we wanted to go into that. And so we have been we added 4 years ago, veterans who also have seen things that are traumatic that they need to work through. And then you were part of the group that came that were veterans, and they're also now active duty first responders. There was a huge variety of them that were there. And that was really a neat opportunity for you, I think, to participate in.
It was really interesting to see that, and if I can share, I don't know if this is okay to share or not.
Yeah, no names.
No names. But what I found interesting is the most chaotic day that could have been.
Yep. The pouring rain.
It was pouring rain, thundering and lightning. I don't know about lightning, but it was thundering. It was loud. And they were given an opportunity to work inside or outside, and they chose inside, which for those that are, familiar with animals or horses, that might not have been the best choice, because in a barn,
in a metal barn,
metal, everything amplifies. And so it was so much louder inside. And so it was really interesting because you have these first responders, and they chose the most heightened horses in the barn to work with. and worked at the barn. So two things that were like, of the extremes they could choose, they chose two of the most extremes.
Yeah. Not knowing. Yeah.
Having no idea again. And then they just went into, they went into first responder mode and started de-escalating.
Wow.
And so just watching that transpire, I was like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. Watching that process take place. And so seeing it through their eyes, you know, standing back, but kind of watching what was happening is just an incredible.
And we get to experience what it's like for them to work in that environment and see how they actually work to de-escalate those things at the same time, you know, because that is a strength. And most often our strengths are also our biggest weakness too. And so I don't know if you guys had a chance to do the 5 senses with them and be present. That is a real opportunity for them to do the self-care, right? Because we get into our nature and here's what we do best and using that gift. And sometimes we can use that gift until we're exhausted or burned out. And that could be for any of us, whether we're first responders, mom, dad, you know, and so are we giving out of, because we feel led to do that, or are we giving out of obligation, and then we, you know, burn out. And so we'll see people from all over, but mostly we're dealing with severe trauma of all from age 9 to 90 is what we say. And in talking with our therapists, I was talking with one of our doctors and I said, she's one of our veteran doctors. Why are you investing in equine assisted psychotherapy? And she said, Donna, there is a big difference between people who are healing from trauma and the ones that are actually able to fill in the gaps of their trauma to the trauma story are the ones that actually make progress, and saw how the activities that we do and the curriculum that we write and put together actually allow those stories to make the connection in the stories and the perception of how things happened or the difference in between things are happening, what life looks like now, where they would like it to be, and what's the difference in between. That really helped them process on their own. And what we've heard from many of our therapists is that the work that we do allows the person to go deeper, faster. So in a shorter period of time, because they're building trust with the animal and really themselves, rather than another person, an individual that might have harmed them. They might see individuals as not safe or trustworthy. But even though they might be afraid of a horse, they feel that much more trust for that animal or animals than they would of another human.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think too, specifically related to, I would say, law enforcement or first responders, you know, there's a fear of, you know, I've got to be okay. If I'm not okay, I'm going to lose my job. And so sitting down with a human therapist and telling them, you know, I'm really not okay at work, well, they, you know, they may not get to the whys and the in-betweens, right? They're just going to hear that. And I think the fear is the patient isn't going to be able to go back to work. Right. And support their family and do what they love to do. And so the horses offer the opportunity to get to that part where they don't feel judged. And maybe it opens it up for them to not feel as insecure about losing their job because of their mental health.
And I think also there's co-regulation that's going on. That's a huge part of what's happening with the horses. And we feel that if we're around people that are anxious or nervous, we'll feel anxious and nervous. The horses do too. But because they're so large. I mean, these guys are big guys. We're, 150 pounds. So, I'm never going to be able to, even with one of the miniatures, they're 300 pounds, right? So the fact that they're living and breathing, and the bigger horse, we have all the way up to 2,500 pounds. That's helping me co-regulate. And we might even do an activity where we're actually doing hands-on breathing, with the animal. And that helps, because we might say, this is part of skill development too. Like I know how to breathe, do box breathing, right? That's one tool that therapists will use and we could use. And someone might say, yeah, I know how to do that. But when there's actual hands-on and you're doing that down the horse's spine, and you're feeling where they're tense, and then you're breathing, the box breathing into that. And we're seeing whether or not you're actually breathing fully and into your lungs. But the big telltale sign is how the horses respond. And so the horse will respond in different ways to let you know that they're also self-regulating. So it's a nice circuit that's going on. But I think most importantly is the effect that the person realizes that they're having on another. So even though it's a horse, that's not missed on people, that can happen with their spouse, their family, siblings, other people around them, coworkers, that they also can have that effect on other people. So it's again, without judgment.
Yeah. It's, oh my gosh, I can't say enough about it.
Because in case I haven't said it, you need to know how precious you are and the work that you're doing, given you do, right? There's bad things that happen. None of us who are on the recipient plan on those things happening. And oftentimes people will retreat, in shame, in embarrassment. How do I talk about this? Depression, what have you. And that's the exact opposite of what needs to happen, right? So we, as humans, I don't even know where that started. It's pride. It's pride and ego, right? And
shame, maybe.
And shame,
cases.
yeah, and embarrassment.
Maybe
And how do I
false
talk
shame,
about this?
right.
Yeah, and taking on responsibility yours.
Yeah.
But we, becomes more of a withdrawal, right? And really, the encouragement is to step forward and to know that you're not alone. And so that's the real encouragement, that you would be willing to leave a career, as a paralegal, leave another career that was very nice career, and have such a passion and a burning desire to advocate for people who might not have a voice, by using your voice and your experience to network these together. And it's California, it's across the nations, it's even worldwide, Tamara. And even if whatever you're talking about, victim process or laws that might be unique to us here in California, I think the important thing is that there's hope, and you're not alone, and that you can figure this, like you can find people like yourself in your local community through community networks that will help you. Key part is that we need to get to the point where we're okay raising our hand and saying, I need help. I don't even know what help I need, but I know I need help.
Exactly.
And we don't want to live like this. And I don't want to see a decade pass living like this. So the encouragement really is that, one, that you are willing to give a voice to people that don't have a voice right now. And hopefully this is the beginning of an army of people who are passionate about what you're doing and helping victims, and people who help victims come alongside them to find hope and healing, know that they're not alone. So you need to know that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, there goes the support again. The little encouragement. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's much needed. And, I think, again, coming from that government sector, almost 20 years in doing this kind of work, it's hard working in the government because there's more work than one person can possibly do.
Yep.
And so I'm hopeful that this is an avenue that allows for more people to step forward and help be voices for the voiceless.
Right.
And amplify the voices that are out there that need to be amplified.
Yep.
Thank
It's a
you.
heavy burden you guys carry in the government. Our veterans and veteran services that are working with them. My understanding from talking with practitioners who have large practices, that, on a traditional work week, a practitioner might have 21 to 30 clients that they're working with, right? And after that, it's too much. There has to be some built-in self-care.
Yeah.
The number that was given me multiple times was 21. So could be 29, could be 20. I mean, that's not an area to be, but the key part is it's lower than maybe some of our government workers, where they might have some of the folks that we work with for the veteran services have over 60 or 90 clients that they're responsible for. Yeah. And so I just want to do a shout out for them to get support that they need from, extra resources, but also for self-care. And also what we found is one of the reasons why we're working so closely with some of the VSOs and vet centers is because it helps them bring together on our property for Hart's Landing Ranch and do therapy sessions in group, which is really profound, because even though they don't know each other, there's like some camaraderie that still happens. And we still have some of these veterans that went through our program 4 years ago that are still getting together. A year ago, they're still meeting once a month for breakfast. I mean, it's meaningful. Yeah. And so as they're able to get together and build the bonds, like you saw with some of the first responder veterans, they now have a community. So it's starting with that community and getting back out that they're not alone. They, their hurt or heart, what they were feeling was not alone. And someone else is feeling that too. And there's help out there for that. So it actually helps the therapists at the VA, because it allows to move those individuals that were unique individuals who didn't want to be in a group in a meeting, but now will be willing to be in a group because they connected out on the ranch.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's an incredible piece of what Hart's Landing Ranch does do. And self-care, I can't say enough about that in the government world. I mean, we had caseloads, depending on what caseload you had, it could be a little smaller. It might have been a more sensitive caseload. That would have been under 100 victims that we supported. But it was more common to have over 100.
Per person?
Per advocate.
Per advocate.
If not more. And so, some of those cases are just simple, maybe it's an identity theft where someone took your name and put it on an envelope or, something like that. And so it's very simple. You mail out information and resources. And sometimes you hear back from those victims. Most of the time you don't. Okay. So that's typically a really big caseload. But I had said before in a podcast that when I started in the DA's office here in 2013, 14, I started here from San Joaquin County. If we had one murder a year, that was a lot. And when I left the office, we were having multiple murders a month. And so crime has escalated. Yeah. And that goes back to, again, educating our community members about what crime looks like, our legislature and so on, and fixing that too. Yeah. But that's a whole other topic for our legislature when they come on the podcast.
And that's important to get the help that people need, because the cost, I guess even let's talk about the cost with Hart's, with equine assisted psychotherapy at Hart's Landing Ranch. It's $1,500 for a individual to go through a group therapy program. And that's for 8 weeks. That's an hour a week for 8 weeks. And at first when we started, I'm like, wow, that seems so expensive. And then I thought, expensive compared to what? When the therapists were telling me what you do in 8 weeks, we can't do in 2 years or 3 years. We cannot get someone to break down those barriers to trust us enough in a period of time. It takes years of time for them coming in. So when I did the calculation, if someone's going in for 2 years, 40 weeks out of the year, it's $150. I mean, do the math. I don't know how you get a therapist for $150, but it's $175 for us for group therapy. So it's still a value, but that's $12,000 for a 2-year period of time. But that's not even the most expensive part to me. The most expensive part to me is the 2 years, the gap in between. And we're hoping that someone stays stable and, so forth. And when you're talking about first responders or veterans that have families and they need to get back to work, they don't have 2 years to go figure it out. We got to get there fast. So what we offer and what we do that's so unique is that we can, the way that we design our curriculum is really get deeper, faster. And that's, if people really want to work and they're willing to be vulnerable. And we've seen that very few cases where someone's not ready to work. And we, lovingly say, let's reconvene when you're ready.
Yeah.
So that's really important. And so the cost is one thing of like actual cost of paying for the therapy service. But what happens if someone is at risk for a suicide or 5150, or the depression leads to drinking or other risky behavior, or drug abuse or unhealthy coping skills? Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's a nice broad way. But, and that's not uncommon.
It's very common
in that 2-year period of time. So that's the risk. And that cost is high to our communities, to our counties, to our, so it would be very beneficial for our assembly people and people who have the purse strings to be able to say, let's be proactive. Let's do something intervention wise. We had a whole group of therapists come down from a homeless camp, veterans, and we put them through a session because they also wanted to hear about it. But we said, no, we're going to actually do a session here. And at the end of that, the Olivan said, we know when someone, even before they walk through the door, what they're going to say to us. And I'm fine. I don't need help. So they said out loud, we know what we're doing is not working. We need to change how we're approaching this.
So they were ready.
They were ready to be able to do that. Now, part of it is then how do we mobilize funding through government spending, through Health and Human Services and those kinds of things. And I've got two full-time jobs already. So figuring out the funding and the right resources, that is something that would really help us on our end, is to be able to have a hot knife through butter to figure out how that would work, because the money is directly going to programs and having immediate impact where we're seeing our exit and entrance and exit surveys being profound.
Well, and to that, funding piece, I know that CalVCB, and they do pay toward mental health services, but when I left, I think the rate that they were paying was below Medi-Cal standard. And so, and the hoops that you have to jump through in order to be a part of that program. And so there are programs out there, but do they see the value? And again, back to the government, does the government see value in, supporting victims in alternate types of therapy that actually work versus going to a therapist and sitting in office for 2 years?
Right. It's less expensive for them to, pull that forward when you think about that. But what I'm sorry to say, but if it's below Medi-Cal, what therapists, I know some therapists that just, they donate their time knowing that it's not going to be a full rate, and they're compelled to be able to make a difference. And that's part of their giving back. How many people are there like that though? And so what really happens most of the time is that people do not seek help.
And there's always a shortage of trying to find someone for help that can provide that service. So I know that was always an issue that we struggled with, trying to find therapy services for victims. Yeah. Because again, we had a list, and that list kept changing. I had to constantly update the list of who was accepting and who wasn't.
Most therapists won't see kiddos, right? So the 9 years old or what have you. And so you're familiar with a client who family reached out to us just out of complete and desperation. We had a tree giveaway, Christmas tree giveaway that we did a year before. Very vulnerable family, and struggled not just with the financial part of it because there wasn't funds, but also finding someone that would actually work with kids and that her granddaughter would be willing to go to. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of shame. Her perpetrator's in jail for 30 years. We'll see, right? What happens, but they needed help right away. Yeah. And it's through our donors and the grants that we get and things like, that helped that happen. So in this case, we were able to use a portion of the money that was given through the victim of the crime. The family was willing to contribute a part, and then Hearts Landing Ranch was willing to contribute a part through our donor. And we want people to we want to use our funds well, right?
Right.
So if people have the capacity to pay, or there's other resources, we try to leverage all of that.
Yeah, because you want to be able to help as many people as you
many people.
can with the funds that you receive through your
Right.
many donations that you get, hopefully. More donations,
Yes.
please.
Yes.
But, we talked a little bit about grants, and I think that's something to bring up too, because there are a lot of my experience, right, having worked with the grant process, is a lot of grants are competitive. And so you have agencies in the community that are all fighting for potentially the same grant funding. And so that's something that I've always found, ironic. Like how are you having organizations fight for funding for victims? Ultimately, the victims end up losing out when you're fighting over the funding, instead of having a pool of funds available and sharing it so that people can have choices of the types of therapy or care that they want to receive.
Right. And sometimes the funding comes with some strings where,
Oftentimes, right?
most of the time comes with some strings.
Yes.
And so if you're willing to participate in the strings, then you're probably more likely to get the funding, but that's not necessarily always to the benefit of the person that you're serving.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's really hard. The bigger ones get bigger sometimes. And yeah, that's a whole different podcast. But there are competitive grants, and it does take a village to be able to do that. So one of our biggest needs is out there. If one of your listeners has a heart for going after grants and has some experience in that, that would be a huge volunteer right now opportunity. We are now just positioning ourselves to take advantage of going after government grants. So we are a SAM registered organization. It's just the time. It's just the time and the talent to be able to do that, and figuring out who is the right person to talk to. The other thing, Tamara, that we're doing, and this is a shout out nationwide, there are family organizations and foundations, or corporate organizations that have foundations where they need to give money away every year. And those are often by invitation. And it's really just, how do they, hear about good organizations that are doing real work and put money directly for impact in the communities. And so it's a shout out for, organizations that have an interest in making an impact in mental health, using, with or without, with the horses, from ages 9 to 90, whether it's a victim of crime, whether it's a first responder, whether it's this family of the first responder or veterans. And so if that's if people know about that, that's huge. So that's.
We're at the end of the year, so it's a great place to do your donations for the end of the year.
And we're a 501c3. It's all tax deductible. And if your company has a matching fund program, it doubles the money. So we do have that. We have great local sponsors. And people, especially, I'll do a shout out for the City of Roseville Chamber. Businesses and people that have just right in this community have been super supportive about making a meaningful impact, out with us. So
it's great information.
One really important part is that equine assisted psychotherapy is an evidence therapy. Yes.
So let's talk more about that, because I know that's important. So there are requirements now that weren't there before that makes it more difficult for kiddos to get therapy.
Yeah.
So,
how do you navigate? How do you encourage parents to help navigate that?
If they're if the parents are in custody,
the guardian,
you have a social worker.
Right.
They're our future. And if it takes 2 years to help them,
if they go,
I mean, what does that life look like if they're in therapy?
Right.
For 2 years and they're in a foster home, but then they go back to their parents, and then they go back to what does that look like? And so we've got to do better, maybe some legislation for kiddos to get them the therapy that they need.
Yeah. I think talking, with the therapist, what we'll find is that sometimes the kids even advocate for themselves if they know what tools are available. So if the guardian is involved, the therapist is involved, they can help with that. A lot of times, let's say we're talking with a 9-year-old that's just had a, perpetrator go to jail for 30 years and there isn't a big support system. What happens is there's a table of adults saying, what would you like to have happen to this 9-year-old? And they don't know, right? So I think we need some leadership, number one. And the judge can appoint and pay for therapy, equine assisted therapy. We have had that happen with different counties. So we serve the greater Northern California area. We work with many counties, and we have experience across the board. And so people can advocate for themselves. Therapists can advocate for this type of work as well. It's not an end all, but I do see where we'll see a kiddo for a period of time, let's say 8 weeks. We had a group of boys who would never have gone into therapy ever. And interestingly, all of them were kids of first responders.
Oh, interesting.
And they had experienced some trauma indirectly, but also in their household. And what was so interesting is that they're all doing fantastic. These are 12-year-old boys.
Wow.
And when you talk about our future leadership, and then one of them was willing to go continue therapy in office with the therapist. So that was really a profound, I'm getting chills just telling you that, because the changes were amazing to go from, I'm not talking about anything, I'm fine, to breaking down, crying, just sobbing. And these are real emotions. This is stuff that they experienced firsthand. These are real.
Yeah.
So would we rather them carry that around until they're having kids of their own? Would we rather get them some help? So that 8 weeks enabled them to, this one young man, to go into therapy and continue therapy. And they're all doing fantastic, And it was really the spark that allowed them to go was to, go hang on the ranch. They don't know all these activities, but that they're going to be going through, but it really opens the door for them to explore, get curious. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably the big thing for people when they come out, is that they're exploring and they're getting curious about how they actually think and reactions that's going on with the animals, or the engagement, the involvement, rather than, oh, that's my mom, she's always like that. That's my brother, he always beats me up. That's this, and put it on a person. It's taking responsibility for your own part in how you're showing up and how others are responding. So yeah. I think kids are really in need of a lot of help right now, and the more advocacy that we can have and pushing to get the help that we need, and staying a voice and being persistent is important for the families to know.
Yeah, great points. Thank you so much for all of that. Do you have anything else you want to share?
There was one more thing. You're not alone. I think people need to know that they're not alone. And if you're not in this area and you're not close proximity, I mean, we have people driving for hours to get to us. It's only for 8 weeks. You can go on to eagala.org, EAGALA.org, and look for programs internationally, actually. We're the only military designated program.
Oh.
So that's a different designation as well. Hart's Landing Ranch is the only military designated program from north of Bakersfield up to Central Oregon and out to Colorado. And that means that we've done extra training beyond our 6,000 hours of training and understand the culture and, the level of trauma that the team that we have is really, really good and cares deeply about change.
Absolutely. And one other thing I wanted to mention, a little shout out for Donna, who was Woman of the Year this year. Yay! So that was incredible. I was actually volunteering at the ranch during that time frame. So that was really, kind of inspired to see that happen, and all the work that you do and all the connections that you put together. And again, you talk about community and building a community. You've got a huge community. And so I'm so glad that you were honored as Woman of the Year this
Thank
year.
you. Thank you.
Senator Nilo.
Senator Nilo in his office, yes.
So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything you do. And I can't say enough about Hart's Landing Ranch. If you have any questions or want to contact Hart's Landing Ranch, do you want
You can go onto our website. There's a way to enter your information in a question, and that's www.hearts, HEARTS, like your chest and your chest, landing, ranch.com. And that's probably the best way to start reaching out to us is through that portal. There's a link for therapy on there for minors and for adults. There's a way, if your heart is drawn to support a scholarship, every dollar counts, whether it's $5 or if you want to, do whole scholarships for folks. As I mentioned, group therapy per person is $1,500, and our goal is to have 100 people served through that. So that's $150,000, and I think it's doable with this group out here. And that's the best way to get started with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And sure we'll connect again in the future.
Yes.
All right.
For sure. Thank you. Everyone have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on Victim Justice Unveiled, where truth is honored, voices are uplifted, and justice is reimagined. Justice isn't a verdict. It's a lived experience. If this episode moved you, share it. If it informed you, act on it. And if it reflected your truth, know that you're not alone. Together, we unveil a path toward change.